Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 760th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Solomon, David's son, upon both whom be peace, after disclosing to Wazir Faris that which had passed between himself and his master, King Hasim, said to him, Is this that I have told thee the truth, O Wazir? Replied Faris, O prophet of Allah, this thou hast said indeed, sooth and verity, but when we discoursed of this matter, none was with the king and myself, nor was any aware of our case. Who then told thee of all these things? Answered Solomon, They were told to me by my Lord, who knoweth whatso is concealed from the eye, and what is hidden in the breast. Quoth Faris, O prophet of Allah, verily this is none other than a mighty Lord and an omnipotent God, and he Islam'd with all his many. Then said Solomon to him, Thou hast with thee such and such presents and rarities. And Faris replied, Yes. The prophet continued, I accept them all, and give them in free gift unto thee. So do ye rest thou and thy company in the place where you have been lodged, till the fatigue of the journey shall cease from you. And tomorrow, Inshallah, thine errand shall be accomplished to the uttermost, if it be the will of Allah the Most High, Lord of heaven and earth, and the light which followeth the gloom, creator of all creators. So Faris returned to his quarters, and passed the night in deep thought. But when morning morrowed, he presented himself before the Lord Solomon, who said to him, When thou returnest to King Asim bin Safan, and you twain are reunited, do ye both go forth some day armed with bow, bolts, and brand, and fare to such a place, where ye shall find a certain tree. Mount upon it, and sit silently till mid-hour between noon prayer and that of mid-afternoon, when the noontide heat hath cooled. Then descend and look at the foot of the tree, whence ye will see 2 serpents come forth, one with a head like an ape, and the other with a head like an ifrit. Shoot them, ye twain, with bolts, and kill them both. Then cut off a span length from their heads, and the like from their tails, and throw it away. The rest of the flesh cook, and cook well, and give it to your wives to eat. Then lie with them that night, and by Allah's leave they shall conceive and bear male children. Moreover, he gave them a seal ring, a sword, and a wrapper containing 2 tunics embroidered with gold and jewels, saying, O Wazir Faris, when your sons grow up to man's estate, give to each of them one of these tunics. Then he said, In the name of Allah, may the Almighty accomplish your desire. And now nothing remaineth for thee but to depart, relying on the blessing of the Lord, the Most High, for the king looketh for thy return night and day, and his eye is ever gazing on the road. So the Wazir advanced to the prophet Solomon, son of David, upon whom both be peace, and farewelled him, and fared forth from him after kissing his hands, rejoicing in the accomplishment of his errand. And he travelled on with all diligence night and day, and ceased not faring till he drew near to Cairo, when he dispatched one of his servants to acquaint King Hasim with his approach, and the successful issue of his journey. Which when the king heard, he joyed with exceeding joy, he and his grandees and the officers and troops, especially in the Wazir's safe return. When they met, the minister dismounted, and kissing ground before the king, gave him the glad news anent the winning of his wish in fullest fashion. After which he expounded the true faith to him, and the king and all his people embraced Al-Islam with much joy and gladness. Then said Asim to his Wazir, Go home and rest this night, and a week to boot, then go to the Hammam bath and come to me, that I may inform thee of what we shall have to consider. So Faris kissed ground, and withdrew with his suite, pages and eunuchs to his house, where he rested 8 days, after which he repaired to the king, and related to him all that had passed between Solomon and himself, adding, Do thou rise and go forth with me alone. Then the king and the minister took 2 bows and 2 bolts, and repairing to the tree indicated by Solomon, climbed up into it, and there sat in silence till the midday heat had passed away, and it was near upon the hour of mid-afternoon prayer, when they descended, and looking about them saw a serpent couple issue from the roots of the tree. The king gazed at them, marveling to see them ringed with collars of gold about their necks, and said to Faris, O Wazir, verily these snakes have golden torques. By Allah, this is forsooth a rare thing. Let us catch them and set them in a cage and keep them to look upon. But the minister said, These hath Allah created for profitable use. So do thou shoot one, and I will shoot the other with these our shafts. Accordingly they shot at them with arrows and slew them, after which they cut off a span's length of their heads and tails and threw it away. Then they carried the rest to the king's palace, when they called the kitchener, and giving them the flesh, said, Dress this meat daintily with onion sauce and spices, and ladle it out into 2 saucers, and bring them hither at such an hour without delay. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 761st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the king and the wazir gave the serpent's flesh to the kitchener, saying, Cook it and ladle it out into 2 saucers, and bring them hither without delay, the cook took the meat and went with it to the kitchen, where he cooked it and dressed it in skillful fashion with a mighty fine onion sauce and hot spices. After which he ladled it out into 2 saucers, and set them before the king and the wazir, who each took a dish, and gave their wives to eat of the meat. Then they went in that night unto them, and knew them carnally, and by the good pleasure of Allah, extolled and exalted be he, and his all might and furtherance, they both conceived on one and the same night. The king abode 3 months, troubled in mind, and saying in himself, I wonder whether this thing will prove true or untrue, till one day, as the lady his queen was sitting, the child stirred in her womb, and she felt a pain, and her color changed. So she knew that she was with child, and calling the chief of her eunuchs, gave him this command, Go to the king, wherever he may be, and congratulate him, saying, O king of the age, I bring thee glad tidings, that our lady's pregnancy is become manifest, for the child stirreth in her womb. So the eunuch went out in haste, rejoicing, and finding the king alone, with cheek on palm, pondering this thing, kissed the ground between his hands, and acquainted him with his wife's pregnancy. When the king heard these words, he sprang to his feet in an excess of joy. He kissed the eunuch's hands and head, and doffing the clothes he had on, gave them to him. Moreover, he said to those who were present in his assembly, Whoso loveth me, let him bestow largesse upon this man. And they gave him of coin and jewels and jacinths and horses and mules and estates and gardens, and what was beyond count or calculation. At that moment in came Wazir Faris, and said to Asim, O my master, but now I was sitting alone at home, and absorbed in thought, pondering the matter of the pregnancy, and saying to myself, Would I wot on this thing be true, and whether my wife Catan have conceived or not, when behold, an eunuch came in to me, and brought me the glad tidings that his lady was indeed pregnant, for that her color had changed, and the child stirred in her womb. Whereupon my joy, I doffed all the clothes I had on, and gave them to him together with 1,000 dinars, and made him chief of the eunuchs. Rejoined the king, O minister, Allah, extolled and exalted be he, hath of his grace and bounty and goodness and beneficence made gift to us of the true faith, and brought us out of night into light, and hath been bountiful to us of his favor and benevolence. Wherefore I am minded to solace the folk, and cause them to rejoice. Quoth Faris, Do what thou wilt. And quoth the king, O Wazir, go down without stay or delay, and set free all who are in prison, both criminals and debtors, and whoso transgresseth after this, we will requite as he deserveth, even to the striking off of his head. Moreover, we forgive the people 3 years' taxes, and do thou set up kitchens all around about the city wall, and bid the kitcheners hang over the fire all kinds of cooking pots, and cook all manner of meats, continuing their cooking night and day. And let all corners, both of our citizens and of the neighboring countries far and near, eat and drink and carry to their houses. And do thou command the people to make holiday, and decorate the city 7 days, and shut not the taverns, night nor day. And if thou delay, I will behead thee. So he did as the king bade him, and the folk decorated the city and citadel and bulwarks after the goodliest fashion, and donning their richest attire, passed their time in feasting and sporting and making merry, till the days of the queen's pregnancy were accomplished, and she was taken one night with labor pains hard before dawn. Then the king bade summon all the Olema and astronomers, mathematicians and men of learning, astrologers, scientists, and scribes in the city, and they assembled and sat awaiting the throwing of a bead into the cup, which was to be the signal to the Astrophels as well as to the nurses and attendants that the child was born. Presently, as they sat in expectation, the queen gave birth to a boy like a slice of the moon when fullest, and the astrologers fell to calculating and noted his star and nativity and drew his horoscope. Then, on being summoned, they rose and, kissing the ground before the king, gave him the glad tidings, saying, "In very sooth, the new-born child is of happy augury, and born under an auspicious aspect. But," they added, "in the first of his life there will befall him a thing which we fear to name before the king." Quoth Asim, "Speak and fear not." So quoth they, "O king, this boy will fare forth from this land and journey in strangerhood, and suffer shipwreck and hardship and imprisonment and distress, and indeed he hath been of the sorest of sufferings. But he shall free him of them in the end, and win to his wish, and live the happiest of lives the rest of his days, ruling over his subjects with a strong hand, and having dominion in the land despite enemies and enviers." Now, when the king heard the astrologer's words, he said, "The matter is a mystery, but all that Allah Almighty hath written for the creature of good and bad cometh to pass, and must needs betide him from this day to that 1,000 solaces." So he paid no heed to their words or attentions to their speeches, but bestowed on them robes of honor, as well upon all who came present, and dismissed them. When behold, in came Faris the Wazir, and kissed the earth before the king in huge joy, saying, "Good tidings, O king! My wife hath but now given birth to a son, as he were a slice of the moon." Replied Asim, "O Wazir, go bring thy wife and child hither, that we may abide with my wife in my palace, and they shall bring up the two boys together." So Faris fetched his wife and son, and they committed the two children to the nurses, wet and dry. And after 7 days had passed over them, they brought them before the king, and said to them, "What wilt thou name the twain?" Quoth he, "Do ye name them?" But quoth they, "None nameth the son save his sire." So he said, "Name my son Sayf Al-Muluk, after my grandfather, and the minister's son Said." Then he bestowed robes on honor of the nurses, wet and dry, and said to them, "Be ye ruthful over them, and rear them with the goodliest fashion." So they brought up the two boys diligently till they reached the age of 5, when the king committed them to a doctor of science, who taught them to read the Koran and write. When they were 10 years old, King Asim gave them in charge to masters, who instructed them in cavalrous, and shooting with shafts, and lunging with lance, and play of polo, and the like, till by the manner they were 15 years old. They were clever in all manner of martial exercises, nor was there one to vie with them in horsemanship, for each of them would do battle with 1,000 men, and make head against them single-handed. So when they came to the years of discretion, whenever King Asim looked on them, he joyed in them with exceeding joy. And when they attained their 25th year, he took Faris his minister apart one day, and said to him, "O Wazir, I am minded to consult with thee concerning a thing I desire to do." Replied he, "Whatever thou hast in mind to do, do it, for thy judgment is blessed." Quoth the king, "O Wazir, I am become a very old and decrepit man, sore stricken in years, and I desire to take up my abode in an oratory, that I may worship Almighty Allah, and give my kingdom and sultanate to my son Sayf Al-Muluk, for that he is grown a goodly youth, perfect in knightly exercises and intellectual attainments, polite letters and gravity, dignity in the art of government. What sayest thou, O minister, of this project?" And quoth the counselor, "Right indeed is thy rede. The idea is a blessed and a fortunate, and if thou do this, I will do the like, and my son Said shall be the Prince Wazir, for he is a comely young man, and complete in knowledge and judgment. Thus will the two youths be together, and we will order their affair, and neglect not their case, but guide them to goodness in the way that is straight. Quoth the king, Write letters and send them by the courtiers to all the countries and cities and sconces and fortresses that may be under our hands, bidding their chiefs be present on such a day at the horse course of the elephant. So the Wazir went out without stay or delay, and dispatched letters of this purport to all the deputies and governors of fortresses and others under King Asim. And he commanded also that all in the city should be present, far and near, high and low. When the appointed time drew near, King Asim bade the tent pitchers plant pavilions in the midst of the Champs de Mars, and decorate them after the most sumptuous fashion, and set them up the great throne whereon he sat, but only on festivals. And they at once did his bidding. Then he and his nabobs and chamberlains and emirs sallied forth, and he commanded proclamation be made to the people, saying, In the name of Allah, come forth to Maidan. So all the emirs and wazirs and governors of provinces and feudatories came forth to the place of assembly, and entering the royal pavilion, addressed themselves to the service of the king, as was their wont, and abode in their several stations, some sitting and others standing, till all the people were gathered together, when the king bade spread the tables, as they ate and drank and prayed for him. Then he commanded the chamberlains to proclaim to the people that they should not depart. So they made proclamation to them, saying, Let none of you fare hence till after you have heard the king's words. So they withdrew the curtains of the royal pavilion, and the king said, Whoso loveth me, let him remain till he hath heard my speech. Whereupon all the folk sat down in mind, tranquil, after they had been fearful, saying, Wherefore have we been summoned by the king? Then the sovereign rose to his feet, and making them swear none would stir from his stead, said to them, O ye emirs and wazirs and lords of the land, the great and the small of you, and all of you are present in the people, say me, wot ye not that this kingdom was an inheritance to me from my father and forefathers? Answered they, Yes, O king, we all know that. And he continued, I and you, we all worship the sun and moon, till Allah, extolled and exalted be he, vouchsafed us the knowledge of the true faith, and brought us out of darkness into light, and directed us to the religion of Al-Islam. Know that I am become a very old man, feeble and decrepit, and I desire to take up an abode in a hermitage there to worship Almighty Allah, and crave his pardon for past offenses, and make this my son, Sayf Al-Muluk, ruler. You know full well that he is a comely youth, eloquent, liberal, learned, versed in affairs, intelligent, equitable. Wherefore I am minded presently to resign to him my realm, and to make him ruler over you, and seat him as sultan in my stead, whilst I give myself to solitude and to worship of Allah in an oratory, and my son and heir shall judge between you. What say you then, all of you? Thereupon they all rose, kissing the ground before him, made answer with hearing and obedience, saying, O our king and our defender, and thou shouldst set over us a blackamoor slaves, we would obey him and hearken to thy words, and accept thy command. How much more with thy son, Sayf Al-Muluk? Indeed, we accept of him and approve of him in our eyes and heads. So King Asim bin Safwan arose and came down from his seat, and seating his son on the great throne, took the crown from his own head, and set it on the head of Sayf Al-Muluk, and girt his middle with the royal girdle. Then he sat down beside his son on the throne of his kingship, whilst the emirs and wazirs and lords of the land and all the rest of the folk rose and kissed ground before him, saying, Indeed, he is worthy of the kingship, and hath better right to it than any other. Then the chamberlains made proclamation, crying, Aman, Aman, safety, safety, and offered up prayers for his victory and prosperity. And Sayf Al-Muluk scattered gold and silver on the heads of the lieges, one and all. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 762nd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when King Asim seated his son Sayf Al-Muluk upon the throne, and all the people prayed for him for his victory and prosperity, the youth scattered gold and silver on the heads of the lieges, one and all, and conferred robes of honor and gave gifts and largesse. Then after a moment, the Wazir Faris arose and kissing ground said, O emirs, O grandees, ye ken that I am Wazir, and that my Wazirat dateth from old, before the accession of King Asim bin Safwan, who hath now divested himself of the kingship, and made his son king in his stead. Answered they, Yes, we know that thy Wazirat is from sire after grandsire. He continued, And now in my turn, I divest myself of office, and invest this on my son Said, for he is intelligent, quick-witted, sagacious. What say you all? And they replied, None is worthy to be Wazir to King Sayf Al-Muluk but thy son Said, and they befit each other. With this, Faris arose, and taking off his Wazirul turban, set it on his son's head, and eke laid his ink case of office before him, whilst the chamberlains and the emirs said, Indeed, he is deserving of the wazirship, and the heralds cried alike, Mubarak, Mubarak, Felix sed as Faustus. After this, King Asim and Faris the minister arose, and opening the royal treasuries, conferred magnificent robes of honor on all the viceroys and emirs and wazirs and lords of the land and other folk, and gave salaries and beneficence, and wrote them new mandates and diplomas with the signatures of King Sayf Al-Muluk and his wazir Said. Moreover, he made distribution of money to the men-at-arms, and gave guardians and the principals abode in the city a full week, ere they departed each to his own country and place. Then King Asim carried his son and his wazir Said back to the palace, which was in the city, and bade the treasurers bring the seal ring and signet, sword, and wrapper, which being done, he said to the 2 young men, O my sons, come hither, and let each of you choose 2 of these things, and take them. The first to make choice was Sayf Al-Muluk, who put on his hand and took the ring and the wrapper, whilst Said took the sword and the signet, after which they both kissed the king's hands and went away to their lodgings. Now Sayf Al-Muluk opened not the wrapper to see what was therein, but threw it on the couch where he and Said slept by night, for it was the habit to lie together. Presently they spread them the bed, and the 2 lay down with a pair of wax candles burning over there, and slept till midnight, when Sayf Al-Muluk awoke, and seeing the bundle at his head, said to his mind, I wonder what thing of price is in this wrapper my father gave me. So he took it together with a candle, and descended from the couch, leaving Said sleeping, and carried the bundle into a closet, where he opened it, and found within a tunic of the fabric of the Jann. He spread it out, and saw on the lining of the black the portraiture wrought in gold of a girl, and marvelous was her loveliness. And no sooner had he set eyes on the figure than his reason fled his head, and he became jinn mad for love thereof, so that he fell down in a swoon, and presently recovering began to weep and lament, beating his face and breast and kissing her. And he recited these verses, Love at the first is a spurt of spray, which doom disposes and fates display, till when deep diveth youth in passion's sea, unbearable sorrows his soul waylay. And also these 2 couplets. Had I known of love in what fashion he robbeth heart and soul, I guarded me. But if malice, perchance I threw self away, unwitting of love what his nature be. And Sayf Al-Muluk ceased not to weep and wail, and beat face and breast, till Said awoke, and missing him from the bed, and seeing but a single candle, said to himself, Whither is Sayf Al-Muluk gone? Then he took the other candle, and went round about the palace, till he came upon the closet, where he saw the prince lying at full length, weeping with sore weeping, and lamenting aloud. He said to him, O my brother, for what cause are these tears, and what hath befallen thee? Speak to me, and tell me the reason thereof. But Sayf Al-Muluk spoke not, neither raised his head, and continued to weep and wail, and beat on his breast. Seeing him in this case, quoth Said, I am thy wazir and thy brother, and we were reared together, and I and thou. So an thou do not unburden thy breast, and discover thy secret to me, to whom shalt thou reveal it, and disclose its cause? And he went on to humble himself and kiss the ground before him a full hour, while Sayf Al-Muluk paid no heed to him, nor answered him a word, but gave not over weeping. At last, being affrighted at his case, and weary of striving with him, he went out and fetched a sword, with which he returned to the closet, and setting the point on his breast, said to the prince, Rouse thou, O my brother, and tell me what aileth thee, or I will slay myself, and see thee no longer in this case. Whereupon Sayf Al-Muluk raised his head toward the Wazir, and answered him, O my brother, I am ashamed to tell thee what hath betided me. But Said said, I conjure thee by Allah, Lord of lords, liberator of necks, causer of causes, the one, the ruthful, the giftful, the bountiful, that thou tell me what aileth thee, and be not abashed at me, for I am thy slave, and thy minister, and counselor in all thine affairs. Quoth Sayf Al-Muluk, Come and look at this likeness. So I looked at it a while, and considering it straightly, beheld he saw written as a crown over its head, in letters of pearl, these words, This is the counterfeit presentment of Badi'a Al-Jamal, daughter of Shahal bin Shakra, a king of the kings of the true believing Jan, who have taken up their abode in the city of Babel, and sojourn in the garden of Iram, son of Ad the Greater. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale, until it be morrow.